Good evening, Sword Family, and welcome to the Teahouse. And it is time once again for tea time. And tonight, we have a guest that everyone knows. He is an author. He is an artist. He is a sword master. And despite his claims to the contrary, he is a cryptid. So everyone welcome our very own Nick Tockert.
Hey, folks. All right. And contrary to popular belief, I am indeed not a cryptid. Urban legend? Suburban legend, yes, but not a cryptid. Thank you, government authorities trying to pursue. Cryptids have to carry a whole card. It's a whole thing.
Aha. Very, 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 very few comments. Thank you for being nice, folks. I appreciate it. And first to the door is Foxy. Hello, everyone.
Hey,
welcome
Foxy.
to the Tea House. And one of my patrons, Dan Hollenfield. Hello, Foxy. Hello, Dan. And Foxy greets Dan, and there's Kitty. Evening. Good evening, Kitty. Dan says, good evening, Kitty. Nice to see you again. Foxy says the pool party took a bit out of me today. She's worn out, so am I. Thankfully, there weren't as many second grade girls running around as I anticipated. There were only 3. So, plus my autistic nephew, who took most of my attention. But the fact that he actually wants to interact with me now, I kind of have to take advantage of it when I get the chance. So Kitty says, try and be nice with comments since Thesis has a gift. Thank you, Kitten. Yes. And Carl is joining us. Good evening, Kitty. Good evening, everyone. Yes, Kitty, I agree. Going to listen tonight. Good. And Donna is joining us. Hey, everyone. Hello, Donna. One of these days, I'm going to do it. Every single time that her name comes up, I think of the Donna song from La Bamba. One of these days, I'm going to do it, too. Foxy is good with vegging and listening. Kitty has a feeling they won't have any trouble filling an hour just talking. You're probably right. And Foxy is giggling at us. And Carl is laughing at us. Look how he did with Kimmy. Well, that was fun. And she didn't even stick around. Donna says all Thesis has to do is ask one question and Nick will talk for almost half an hour. Mm-hmm. No comment.
Oh, that's my job on my show, you know? If I'm sitting here, that's my job. Interviewing's a little different rhythm, but go on, please.
Here we go. Don't forget to like and share and all that stuff. Hey, you got to it before Donna. I'm impressed. And Donna is greeting me. Dan says, I think that if they just concentrate on the difference between Asian and European weapon techniques, they could fill 4 hours easily. You're not wrong. But we can't go that long.
Well, and what's staggering is the differences are far less than the similarities. Because we're still limited by human biomechanics.
There's only so much ways that the human body can move. It's just a matter of where you're focusing. And there is a greeting to Nick from Donna. Okay.
Hi, Donna. How you doing?
Very, very short comments tonight. I appreciate that, guys. All right. So, very first question I always ask, because we are in the tea house, what are you drinking?
Oh, right now I'm only drinking my grape stuff because it's good for my throat, the grape squirt. But I was drinking a lovely white pear tea earlier.
Ooh. Ooh. Ooh,
It
that sounds
was
good.
Celestial Seasonings put it out. It's very mild, uh, rather high caffeine, so I can only drink it in a very narrow window of the day.
Oh, yeah.
But it's just a delightful tea. It's different from I usually drink when I'm drinking tea oolong black, very very strongly brewed, as strong as I can get it without interfering with too many tannins.
Yeah.
Because it's the whole steeping it and brewing it without over brewing it. So
Hmm.
getting the temperature balances right.
Oh, yeah. I have two brand new teas that I got from Joe and Trey for my lovely tea set here that they're waiting for a review on. So I'll be doing that sometime, hopefully shortly. And
Cool.
Sarah is joining us. Really just need to listen, but I'm ecstatic to be here to be amongst you all. Well, we're glad to see you, Sarah. It's always good to have you around, even if you
And
don't.
never hesitate to wade in, please.
Oh, yeah. So, next question is, how did you very first get into the martial arts?
Very, very first would be uh, being a little kid, and it was the 80s, little kid, uh, latchkey kid classic. And,
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in a very rigid house, so even though I was by myself, I was still under fairly strict controls. So I was only supposed to watch television from a few stations. So for a large period of my life, I was brought up watching the old black and white Zorro's serials.
Okay.
So Zorro is one of those characters that both historically, when you dig into it, delightful, but when you are the little guy who's picked on,
Mm-hmm.
Zorro is exactly the kind of character you're going to harmonize with real early. And I think between that and then, you know, mechanically, I learned how to use an axe to defend myself actually first. What you'd consider a felling axe. Technically closer to more often than not, the splitting maul, because that's what I had. So I spent a very long period of time defending myself with a splitting maul, which is basically, if you've never handled one, you take an axe and a sledgehammer and you put them in a room, and if they like each other very much, they have a special hug, and a splitting maul is born. But about that time, I fell in love with uh, Chinese and definitely the Japanese samurai movies.
Oh, yeah.
The Kurosawa movies. So
Mm-hmm.
I found a book on uh, Japanese weapons. I don't know who the author was because they did not translate it. This is, again, way back in the early days.
Yeah.
So, hand drawn illustrations. Looking back many years later, I found out that they were Aikido weapon techniques. But
Okay.
so I fell in love with the Boken and the Joe staff and a few other different self-taught styles, and I did that far longer than I'd care to admit. I briefly ran with a guy who was teaching me just enough Olympic saber to give me monstrously bad habits when I took up rapier in the SCA.
Yeah.
And back then, this is before the internet became the internet that we know. This is
Mm-hmm.
pre-search engines. So it was, you grab whatever knowledge you can get your hands on because very few things were translated. So I studied all sorts of things. I studied from books I couldn't read. I studied from books that I had the book laid out on one hand and, the German to English dictionary in the other, or, trying to figure out what it is. Or, sometimes in the Latin, because at one point I was rather adept with Latin. I'm not anymore, but same with Japanese. That's why I took 3 years, 2.5 years of Japanese in high school. But at the same time, because of Zorro, I was always chasing and not really understanding it because I didn't have the terminology. La verdadera destreza, the Spanish style, and what happened. When you're doing that, here's a this library has a longsword book. Okay, I'm studying longsword because I got a hold of this book for however long. At one point, much later on, and this is after I met Amanda, and after I've been in the SCA, I got a hold of Dr. Yang Jwing Ming's amazing Introduction to the Sword DVD, which I recommend anybody who wants to dabble in Chinese at all. Start there.
Oh yeah.
I also got to view the Maestro Ramirez's La Verdadera Destreza, the Spanish DVDs that were put out by Anthony DeLongis, who does his own amazing work, especially if you're interested in whip. I know Kitty does rope dart. I don't know how much she dabbles in whip, but if you get a chance, Anthony DeLongis has some fabulous stuff on whip cracking, just if that interests you. And again, see, the thing is, everything I did was parallel. So at the same time I'm doing all this, I'm also learning archery, I'm learning marksmanship across enough types of freedom dispensers to keep my my family happy, having grown up with a military family. So very, it's one of those after a while, because to prepare for this, I knew you were going to ask, who have you read? Who have you studied? I have pages from my notes that I've been copying down, trying to keep track of how many, and I'm like, that's not all there. I was actually, while this was going on, I was still looking through my notes going, who all have I studied? Yeah. Because I studied it from the perspective that I've studied all the martial arts very quickly, is what do they all agree on? So for my own study, I watched everybody get into these passionate arguments about, in this specific situation, you're supposed to do this. In this specific situation, you're supposed to do this. And they'd argue. But if I found something everybody agreed on, I would handle it. And hello, Robin. So that's why you have to forgive my enunciation, because I have a speech impediment, and the vast majority of terms I've learned from reading them. To start for terminology, and then you find people who can practice it, but it gets in. So, Lignitzer, Lignitzer, and I've chased back to him when you were looking at early Western, because if you read Rangneck, if you read Danzig, I don't think Talhofer mentions him, but he might. Some of them, they just plagiarize huge chunks of this manual. He just said it right. I don't need to say it right again. So if you find other established masters just taking chunks out of a manual, you need to know that. Because they found it so important that they put their own egos aside to direct quote from this guy. Which, friends, if you want drama and beauty, you have to read the Introduction to Sword manuals. Even if you're not interested in the styles or whatever, the bashing that they have on whoever they are opposing, that they're trying to counteract, usually it's this. It's sort of like how every movie has one company will make one movie this is our space movie and yada yada yada, and then the other company will make almost the exact same movie. You see a lot of that in the manuals of a period because it was a business. Across the board, there's this balance of swordmasters wanting to write down enough that they can sell their books, but not write down so much that people don't have to come to them for the really good stuff. So you have layers of gatekeeping, and then you have, when you're going through history, swordmasters who trained under the earlier ones, and they're writing the things that weren't in the manuals, but their previous master told them. And you run into things like, the interaction between masters. The legendary interaction that made Wing Chun Longpole, for example, was the Chinese barge pushers.
Mm-hmm.
They would push the barge upriver. They'd get paid and have to walk back downriver to get on another barge. So the bandits learned, hey, if you see somebody walking down the river and they're carrying a 15-foot pole, jump them, they have money. And it was a problem, and I cannot remember the names of the two gentlemen. I'm terrible with easily pronounced names, let alone, some of the more elaborate. But basically, at one of the rest area of that period, a barge pusher was sitting getting incredibly intoxicated with one of the monks who worked on Wing Chun.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens when you get very strong martial arts oriented people a little tipsy sometimes, historically. I do not condone combining intoxicants and weaponry ever, but historically, this has overlapped. You went, well, how do I defend myself? And everywhere I go, I have literally a 12 to 15-foot pole. So the style of Wing Chun Long Pole, which is surprisingly condensed, and I do love a good condensed style. You're in, you're out. It's not very florid. It tells you what it wants to do, and that's what it does. Was developed by these two guys, who just spent like a number of days in this chemically inspired state. And what I love about it is, and the reason I love about it is, I am at heart a rapierist. I am always going to be on some level a fencer. It's all Zorro's fault. If you look at Wing Chun Longpole, it is literally fencing with a pike. That's it. It is basic fencing with a pike. You have C disengages. The lines are all the same. I like the term atmospheres. One thing the Eastern practitioners tend to get better than the Western practitioners is the concept of the middle road and having to defend it. But yeah, I love that. And that sort of thing brought me to the SCA, where I would find people who were Western practitioners, and I would recognize that they're doing something, because I'm very observant, that no. What do you mean no? You say you are fighting ringneck, or you are fighting Meyer, Meyer, not Mair. But that footwork does not match that. So what did you do? And we had to talk to find out that they spent a lot of time doing Taekwondo, or Shadokan karate, or something like that. And that footwork never leaves. So I find it, and so I would end up, I called it playing patty cake. I've been, because you have to understand, I've been teaching people for 25 years across 3 states and in at least, I want to say 7 organizations as essentially a guest instructor. I've got a few hundred students under my belt that I've taught in various styles while developing the simple sword. So when I go, how much have I learned? Well, I cross train with people who cross train.
Mm-hmm.
So you get the equivalent of, grab a chunk of plywood at Menards, right? You grab a piece of pine and a piece of plywood. And you look at your piece of pine and you go, how many trees are involved in the design of this piece of pine? Well, one, they cut this board out of one tree. You look at the plywood that they're using for flooring, it's the same thickness, but it can hold hundreds of times more because there have been hundreds of different donors looking at things from different angles. So all the fibers are interwoven, kind of like how Kevlar works.
Mm-hmm.
So when you start to get into that, how do you sort out what tree did this come from? I view the martial arts as give me the buffet. Train me or do it in front of me. If you won't train me, I will watch. And then you are training me anyway. I also, unfortunately, have a lot of experience with practical applied experience of weapons and melee combat. So my view, and medical, because I was a direct support professional for severely mentally and physically handicapped people, and I specialized in high-level schizophrenics, explosive disorders, very, 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 at times, dangerous people to deadly people. I worked with people who, some of them had literal body counts. I worked with children who had body counts. That was a bit much for me, I will admit. Just
hey,
the
Don.
overlap. But hi, Don. I'm sorry. I know you have your list to tick through.
The whole reason that I named this channel the Teahouse, and I talked about this on the very first episode, is there's a scene in Jet Li's Fearless where Jet Li's character Ho Yun-ja is having tea with the Japanese fighter that he's going to be fighting the next day. And they're discussing martial arts back and forth. And Ho Yun-ja basically says that I don't care about styles. It's not what I'm aiming for. We are having a discussion with our bodies.
Yes.
And that was kind of the idea of what I wanted to do. So it just that's kind of how we came up with the name.
And it works. I think we almost all, on a secret level, aspire to be the mental. And yes, I never really got to put much. I'm trying to remember if I got to spar with Robin or not. I don't think I did. But that different incarnation of myself.
Yeah.
But in the movie Hero, one of my favorite fights, it isn't just that the fight's this incredibly beautiful fight. It's that it's revealed through the understanding of stance changes between two accomplished martial artists, where they were both so in the zone, they understood exactly how the fight would go, who would win, who wouldn't. Very, what did they call it? Holmes vision in the wonderful Sherlock Holmeses that featured Bartitsu, which is another thing I've played into, which in itself is an incredibly hybrided style. Yes, cerebral. But if the fact that two martial artists of that caliber, at least in fiction, were able to sort out their capacities without having to destroy or damage the artistry of each other, I find fascinating.
That was the fight between Sky and Nameless in the chess court. Robin worked juvenile rehabilitation, and part of the job was de-escalate and defend. Everyone was surprised that I was able to keep up with the bigger male employees. Told them about my fencing and self-defense training. Oh, there you go. See,
I've known Robin so long, I have to be very careful not to accidentally dox her.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I've known the only person I've known longer that you guys know is Kat Rothermel, and I met Kat Rothermel originally in kindergarten. So
damn,
yeah, she was a senior in high school when I was in kindergarten, and she looked like the perfect cross between Cyndi Lauper and Stevie Nicks. And if you understand what that does to a young man's mind, but yeah, we are high school buddies extremely. Robin Yoda is a poem that was never finished, but there's the artistry and the practical, and where they overlap and intersect is where it gets incredibly interesting to me.
Yeah. Now you've kind of just covered this a little bit with the first question, but what is your preferred weapon or weapons? Because it's not always one.
My answer to that question is always the one I have.
Yeah.
Because one of the things I work with, especially my advanced students, I have a very non-traditional clientele.
Mm-hmm.
In that the people I work with usually either have the vast majority are women. I'd say 75 to 80%. Most of them have gone through. They've survived sexual assault. They've survived abuse. They are maybe suicide survivors. And I do think it's wrong that we're not supposed to use that term. We're, on the line. Yeah, I don't think that's right. You need to talk about truths.
Yeah.
And so for a lot of them, I'm building them up and helping them get their power back. But to do that, they have to learn that the skill sets we're developing are not the showy martial arts demonstration skill sets.
Mm-hmm.
They're practical that can then be applied to the basic items around you and analytical. Now, beyond all that, I do love a short. Okay, my favorite weapon is an 1873 Spanish Bilbao. Charles, and I always get the Charles wrong. I want to say it's Charles III, issued them. It is a much more effective version of one of these, but roughly with a 34-inch blade. So it is very close in function to this. This is a Tizona, and I like this too, but I prefer in closer quarters the extra hand protection that can be gained from the style hilt. Incredibly rare, ridiculously expensive, and nauseatingly niche. Worse, because they are named after the city of which they are built commonly. It's Bilbo. So every single time I try to look up my favorite sword, I find a lot of things that look like this.
Yep.
Which ironically is a Celtic leaf blade dating all the way back to the Bronze Age and is second or third on my list. Beyond that, I prefer a Joe staff. Because I have mobility issues. 1907 cavalry saber, very nice,
Robin,
excellent hilt. But
we're gonna have to talk.
What?
Me and Robin are gonna have to talk. I wanted to have her on here one of these months, if we can get that.
It would be fascinating, and I'm encouraging her to do so. I think Robin would be served incredibly well with a VTuber because she doesn't like to put her face out there. regularly.
And that's fine. She could be just on voice.
But,
I don't care, but I think it'd be an interesting conversation.
And getting Robin to come out further is always one of the great challenges. And she likes the 6-foot quarterstaff as an alternative. I go with the 4 to 5 foot Joe staff. So basically cane to walking stick length, simply because the vast majority of time I'm indoors.
Well, yeah, and Dan, you're giving me ideas for future shows, but you have to look at it the other way around.
Oh yeah,
as unarmed moves that can translate to armed moves, because a lot of the moves in forms were developed with weapons in mind.
Absolutely. But that's one of the great differences you find between the Chinese, like, culture, overarching, I know it's a very broad thing to say, versus the Western. The Western really breaks it into unarmed combat. Historically, is based in some form of wrestling.
Yeah.
That includes fisticuffs. So there's punches and stuff. There are limited kicks, but not nearly as many as the Eastern traditions have developed, and that is sort of in its bubble. And then you have the weapon that as a secondary field. But yeah, the Chinese systems that are unarmed make so much more sense when you realize it's armed, to the point when I very, very first time I was exposed to Tai Chi, I started laughing. And I couldn't help it. And the gentleman teaching me stopped and said, "Okay, what is so funny? Why didn't you tell me it was a single sword style?" And he went, "What? You just drew the sword." As soon as I stopped parting the wild horse's mane, my whole universe went, "That's what they're doing." And you just feel the Tetris blocks of logic fall into place.
And it's not always with a weapon in mind. Sometimes it's just you need to pay attention to where your body is.
Right.
There's punches in, like, long fist where you go like this. Now, why is this arm here? Well, that's there to remember where your body is. You're not. Plus, it could be used if you're being attacked from both sides.
And see, that's why I like certain styles over other styles, and I detest the thing about modern fencing, modern sport fencing, is it is a flexible. All three systems, foil, epee, and saber, are flexible weapon styles, and they don't admit it, because to get the speeds they want, the flicks are so important. And it has so advanced in the linear that it becomes dangerous in the melee. So my approach, unlike many of the trainers that you encounter, is to go from melee out. What will keep you alive when you are jumped? When you are attacked, it is usually by cowards. When you are attacked by cowards and braggarts, they usually do it in numbers, from my personal experience.
So what is your preferred style with your weapons of choice?
See, my preferred style is literally the simple sword, because I can't reach back at this point and tear apart the plywood. I spent 20 years building a plywood function, and it will shift instantly and fluidly, especially if I have something as dynamic as my walking stick, because my walking stick isn't a walking stick. My walking stick is a staff, spear, splitting maul, cane, short sword, long sword, dagger, but just by flowing across the length of it to accomplish what I want. So, grandfather of weapons, it is everything and nothing, which makes it so hard to write a dedicated book just about.
Yeah.
So yeah, where beyond what I've dictated and distilled over a quarter of a century, and this was 15 years. This was 15 years of notes. How I fight now, because I've had to once again I was neurologically damaged, and I have certain chronic and expansive neurological conditions now that I didn't have then, which means I've had to take everything and pull it tighter.
Yeah.
I don't have time for showmanship when I am working serious. It's why it took me so long, again, to teach staff fight, my system of staff fighting versus fencing, because fencing I kept in the sphere largely of what I'm doing and using that as a stepping stool for other accomplishments as well. Building people up. Helping people is the goal. The sword is the tool that lets me carve a way towards it. My stick is what I stop people who want to do harm onto me with, if I don't want to resort to ballistic solutions. So I had to avoid a lot. It's like, because I've worked in schools and worked in medical care facilities and in homes, and because I have to deal with my own son, I was trained heavily in crisis prevention and intervention, which they lovingly say is hug fu. But how do you defend yourself against someone who at that moment wants to do everything in their power to hurt you or kill you without harming them and gaining no malicious intent, reaction, or application? So everything has to be defensive, negative, de-escalating, and you can never allow vindictiveness of any sort to creep in. So it takes the perspective of the goal of every real conflict, every real physical encounter, is to neutralize the threat. If the means you use to neutralize the threat create another threat, you have failed. So, if somebody comes at me with a knife and I knock them down, they bump their head and die,
you're in trouble.
The present threat is neutralized. However, I am now under threat of legal issue, which takes me to court, where I'm under threat of, which could take me to jail, where I'm now under a whole lot of different threats.
Yep.
It's all about weighing that. And because I've had enough real life perspective, you're going to find that when you're seeing me stepping out of host Nick mode and even out of teacher Nick mode into the mechanical, almost Machiavellian, and please read Machiavelli. Don't use it as a guidebook, but read it and understand it. Because they are. Read Machiavelli's The Prince. Read your philosophies. Understand what Nietzsche was saying, even if he's nuts on some things. They're called the great thinkers for a reason. You have to constantly be mentally growing and not sedating into a mass-produced physical play of what the root of the martial art is. So yeah, you won't get straight answers out of me. I'm sorry about that.
That's fine. That's kind of why I prefer like Bagua and Tai Chi to the really, really forceful, like
Well, yeah,
Wing Chun and stuff like that. Because
yin redirection gives you so much more to work with.
Yeah, you don't need like to go to the nuclear option every single time. It's a lot easier to just redirect instead of going force against force. You can just not be there, go the other way. It's just
what will you look for, especially in actual application, is that de-escalation. You want physical tact.
Yeah.
See, the goal is to be able, in a verbal conflict, the goal is to be able to tell someone to go to hell in such a way that they politely ask you for directions.
Yeah.
I feel the same way. So, if you can, and I've been accused of studying Aikido, and I did read some of the weapons, but I never studied unarmed Aikido. I like reverse engineered into a lot of it because I did a lot of Tai Chi, and I did a lot of the basic weapons that I didn't realize were related to Aikido. So I just walked into the path that seemed most logical to do the least harm, and I ended up there. But the best physical option is somebody comes at you and they trip, and they're sitting on a couch, and they don't know how they're sitting on a couch, and you're going, "Are you okay, man? Are you doing okay?" If you can do it right, they don't even realize that their physical aggression has been met.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up watching Jackie Chan movies. I mean, you want something that will infect your mind. That's why, what's your favorite weapon? Literally, I'm going to put my hand down, and whatever I have my hand on is my favorite weapon at this moment till I can traverse to the next weapon to, move through. Anything but unarmed. But that's the philosophy, and I think that's what's going to get you where you need to be.
Oh yeah, that was kind of like the next two questions all rolled into one right there. Is incorporating martial arts into your job or past jobs, and have you noticed that being a martial artist has helped you be more calm when negative things happen in the job? It's like the same question, just look at it from different ways.
For that, we have to go into why I went into fencing. I studied martial arts my whole life, personally as best I could. Very poor kid, the library of my friend. But being self-taught is never a really good thing. You always want to try it. But the Nick, many of you would not recognize. I'm sorry, I touched my phone. It was trying to call somebody. Would not even recognize the Nick who started fencing, because I started fencing to learn to focus and control and not be dominated by the tremendous amount of totally justified anger that came from the conflicts I had experienced.
Yep.
So on one side, it was never again. I don't mind I don't mind losing. Losing, as long as I survive, sucks. But going into it, it was I never wanted to be without options. To be completely the victim of a situation is a very different type of situation. And that was the yang of how I was approaching why I went in. The yin was to control my capacity for sudden and devastating physical response to physical stimuli. So I had been offered two routes, basically. I could go SCA heavy or SCA light. And I dabbled in heavy training for a while officially. enough to realize at that time it was unlocking things in me that I was working to not have running wild. It would have been catharsis, not growth.
Mm-hmm.
Though I had capability.
Yeah.
In fencing more than anything started to teach me to breathe.
Mm-hmm.
And it pulled it in. And from that, literally everything good in my life has been carved out of the events around me with a training sword.
Yeah.
Everything good roots back to my pursuit of the sword. Uh, and the things that wouldn't are only capable of happening because I pursued the sword.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for me, it is an art exactly the same as drawing and sculpting and
Yeah.
metalworking and fiber arts and all these other things I've done or dabbled in or am doing right now. It's all the same.
Pretty much, yeah.
But that's what it takes to get, for me, to be the person I want to be, not the person I could have been.
Mm-hmm.
And to become useful enough to justify my continued existence.
So, what kind of martial arts media do you consume? Video games,
Yeah.
movies?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. What kind do I? Yes.
That was pretty much
All of
Trey's
the
answer
above.
too. Yeah. Whatever you can get your hands on.
Video games. I do. Obviously, because I know enough of what I'm doing, I prefer either slightly more realistic games, like Bushido Blade from way back.
Yeah.
Some of the Soul Calibur styles. Uh, there are a few other lesser known games, Hellish Court, but or the traumatically bizarre games, like put it way out there, like Dark Stalkers or Evil Zone, for fighting games. I'm the same way about my. The dog is sounding off on the excitement about my
Yes.
movies. Give me the cruddiest, uh, schlockiest fight you can. Give me the greatest you can. Give me the Princess Bride duel, the duel at the end of Rob Roy, the duel at the end of what is it? Oh God, what is that Polish movie? I want to say it's a Polish or German movie where they end up saber fighting in the mud, and it becomes pretty clear that these actors, you know what I'm talking about.
I know the movie.
Yeah, Darksiders, absolutely. And when I play a game, I try to beat the game with every single character, at least on easy or normal, so that I can understand the style. That's why I love the Soul Calibur games. And yes, of course, Soul of Raphael. I mean, of course, Soul of Raphael. There is no, but also literally everyone else.
Yeah.
I'm an anime nut, of course. And Star Wars. I love Star Wars. I love Star Trek. The martial arts in Babylon 5 are interesting because while they're a little 90s telegraphy, each race has its own martial art fighting style. So, and that's something I haven't seen. It becomes one of my great hang-ups. I hate when I watch a fighting movie, and unless it's boxing or something like that, yo, Adrian, that's fine. But where everybody's fighting the same style and there's no reason for them to, that just tells me it's lazy fight choreography. But oh God. I also have a deep passion for pre-wire fu kung fu movies.
Yeah.
I love pre-wire fu. Give me the Criterion Wu Tang collection any day of the week. even like, I mean, you know, the guy with secret kung fu and what is it? The dragon is it the dragon's hateful revenge? It's the dragon's something revenge. I mean, these are wonderfully cheesy where the guy's got at one point magnetic, he's got magnets in his hands and he's repelling the magic magnetic sword and a 47 Ronin. I mean, and there you're getting into extreme quality.
Depending on the version. Because the version with Keanu Reeves in it is trash. That is garbage. Do not watch that movie. But there is a reimagining that moves it from Japan into kind of a fantasy medieval Europe. That version, go watch that right now.
I do believe there is an old Japanese version that is amazing. I want to say it's black and white.
Yeah. There's several.
Now, because that's
don't watch.
I can't remember. I don't think Kurosawa did one, but
yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and that's probably the version. I'm a Kurosawa nut. How can I not be? But it's
Seven
like
Samurai.
I love The Matrix for what it was, right?
Yeah.
In that it was absolute farce, and I have to be careful because it's easy to say it's garbage because it's not accurate, and it's not. It's great fun, but it's farcical.
Yeah.
And over the top. And the problem is after that you have this period of really fun movies where the fighting is so wire-fu over the top. It would be painful if the movie if it wasn't that much fun. I'm looking at the Charlie's Angels movies, which I will watch any day of the week, especially the second one. But it's sort of like the Batman and Robin Schumacher Batmans. No, this is junk food.
Yeah.
It's when you pull over because you really want the kind almost slutty seeming greasy spoon driver hamburger. You don't want, I'm going to the shady taco stand knowing it is a shady taco stand. I accept the price of the curse I am imbibing right now. I don't go to that for education. I go to that for entertainment. But I feel the same way about firearms in general. I feel the same way about a lot of historical movies. You'll see something, it'll twitch. But then sometimes it's just so much fun. I love Westerns. And a lot of people get, what, you love Westerns? Yeah, they're martial arts movies. What did you say? Westerns are martial arts movies when you realize the art of drawing and sheathing the pistol is just American Aikido.
Yeah.
And when you realize they're all samurai movies anyway, it's beautiful. But
now, I probably already know the answer to this, but I ask it of everybody anyway. So when you practice outside,
yes,
people come and watch you, and and how do you respond to that?
I always, if somebody comes to watch, I always invite them to come to a safe distance and ask me any questions. When I practice outside, I prefer to use trainers that obviously look like trainers. So that's why I was a big fan of the Rawlings synthetic Rawlings synthetic swords that came out because they were reliable, they're very sturdy, but these are plastic toys. And you have to understand, I'm coming at it from a perspective where there was a misunderstanding and there was a multi-department, special task force organized and nearly deployed because they confused what the Historical Fencing Guild was because somebody said they saw somebody in crazy armor, doing military drills, and we were wearing motorcycle pads and training with plastic swords. Now, I do often train with a riot shield because it doesn't damage the plastic sword. But it's that balance of, if you're going out there, it's like when I go outside and I play with Nerf guns, I don't use Nerf guns that look at all realistic.
Mm-hmm.
I prefer my trainers to be orange and bright whenever possible. Oftentimes I will mark them with orange tape. But if somebody comes up, I want to know about them as much as they want to know about what's going on. And very quickly I've acquired students that way. I've acquired contacts that way. Every so often I will get I'll bump into somebody, or I'll get a message from somebody that some afternoon I was doing drills. They came up, or I was sparring with Trey or Amanda or somebody, Richie. I showed them through the initial, gave them my card, said, go look up the Simple Sword on Amazon. If you want more into this, I broadcast. And they go on this whole journey. And then they start seeking out dojos to train in. And that's one of the great joys in my life. You know?
Yeah.
It's important. I do not make master swordsmen. I do not train in nor teach a style that is the great secret martial arts. I teach elementary school for people who didn't get to go to class. Or, maybe primary is a better word, through high school. And then you get to pick, if that's enough for you, groovy. You find a point of interest, you go to collegiate, You find a college that will teach you, or you take adult ed courses. But what I've sought to do is make a broad-based general system that I can teach relatively quickly, that can be catered to the needs of the student, be it the conventions they're using, or their physical limitations, or their mental conditions, that from there they can grow. I am not a pillar or a pinnacle. I'm a footstool. I just shared it today. I found it somewhere in the wilds of Facebook. The first thing that happens to a blind person who suddenly sees is they throw away the stick that let them see. And it is my greatest joy in life to be that stick, knowing full well I will likely be discarded when they've moved to somewhere else they need to be. And I accept that, because when you are training, you are not the main character. It is not about the master. While it looks, you have all these people looking at the instructor, the teacher, whatever it is not about them. The higher a leader you are, the more servant you are. So what I really look for when I meet somebody, I'll ask something a lot of times like, how may I help you? How may I be of service to you? Because I want to help them level up in their story. So when I have 15 or 20 people and we're going through the basic drills, I am watching 15 or 20 different stories being told. And I'm just trying to help them get to what is going to serve them the best. Everything is about being accurate, not being right.
Yeah.
And when people get caught up in this is my way is the right way. No. My goal is to help you find your fight. What can you give me to help you do that? And what can I give you to help you do that? Once in a while, I bump into somebody like Trelena who stays. But the vast majority of people, and I mean, I lost count between long-term people, between because of the way I left the SCA, I continue to serve Scadians from outside the SCA so that they get the benefit and don't have to worry about catching any flack.
Mm-hmm.
And occasionally, well, you get no reward out of it. It's not about me.
True.
It's and of course it's not true. I love catching the light off of somebody else who is succeeding. I love feeling the glow of someone who is being recognized. I'm intensely uncomfortable being the one recognized because too many trainers are out there where they're either literally trying to build a harem, and I've seen that where the purpose of training is to find sword bunnies to attract and literally get into quite bizarre sexual situations. They're trying to build their own ego, and they're treating the skill set of survival as a commodity, not a necessity. I believe everybody who has a physical capability to do something to defend themselves, even if it's just learning to pay better attention to their surroundings, they need that. And that's where I try to offer and build a path that they can find it. But so whatever I meet someone, in that moment, I'm assessing how they move, how they talk, what was their purpose. I'm very big on assessment. Please read my book. It talks about, breaking down and assessing yourself and your opponents. A lot of the manuals won't do that. And if there is sincerity there, am I in the place where the universe has put me to intersect with this person and nudge them a little bit toward something that could be better? And that's all it is. It's all it is at the core. Is just I want to give them a nudge out of the show them a path out of the twilight forest, get them on the road where they need to be. And if I'm forgotten, all the better, because they should outgrow me. My first goal with any student is to teach them to beat me.
Now we've discussed a few of these, but what is your favorite on-screen sword fight?
Okay. It almost feels like a cop-out to say the cliffside fight between Dread Pirate Roberts, a.k.a. Wesley, and Inigo Montoya.
No, that's a great fight.
I mean, it's so easy. So I have to put that up there. I have to put my favorite fight in all of Star Wars is actually animated. It is from the end of Rebels when Obi-Wan and Darth Maul meet up on Tatooine. The final fight of Darth Maul. Because that understood more than any fight in the entire Star Wars universe how old swordsmen fight. It's like, for all the showiness and all the weirdness, there are a couple Basil Rathbone fights from his pirate movie days that are like, I want to say Captain Blood's phenomenal. But my favorite sword fight related scenes aren't even true fighting. My favorite sword fight relating scenes are in The Mask of Zorro, Antonio Banderas, and Anthony Hopkins' Diego de la Vega. The training scenes. I only have one beef with it, is he got his circles wrong. You work outward, not inward. But beyond that, everything is exquisite in that. More than anything. So, there's that. My favorite Eastern martial arts fight. Ooh. I'm torn because there are several
Ooh.
Jackie Chan fights that are just so phenomenal. And now everybody
Yeah.
would go Bruce Lee. And Bruce Lee's fights are very technical. They're very good. But
Yes.
are they my favorite? Isn't necessarily the most accurate or the most, you know. So, oh wait, actually, I know what it is. My favorite martial arts movie fight, Eastern. Why did it take me so long? Is
Hmm.
from the movie City Hunter with Jackie Chan before he learned to speak English phonetically. The
Mm-hmm.
Street Fighter arcade fight, best
I knew
fight
you were going to
ever.
say that.
I was trying not to go there, but I keep hearing that little incidental music running in my head. It won't let me go. So there you go. That's not what you learn from. That's what you learn. And incidentally, City Hunter is still my favorite Jackie Chan movie of all time.
It's. I
Uh,
think
be
Drunken Master 2 is probably my favorite, but that's probably because
yeah,
I just watched it a few days ago for his birthday.
and that's where with Jackie you have to go by uh, eras. Talking
Yeah.
about Jackie Chan movies is a lot like talking about Godzilla movies, where you
Uh-huh.
have to kind of keep the eras within the era for them to make sense. Because yeah, Drunken Master 2. I mean, these are transcendental
Oh, yeah.
kung fu movies. Uh, I wish I could remember. I don't think it's the Dragon's Revenge. I need to find it because I had collections of like I'd go to the dollar store and find here's 20 20 kung fu movies for a buck.
Uh-huh.
All these stacked
Uh-huh.
DVDs right next to where you'd find like the B grade horror movies. And I'm like, this is entertainment for life. Um, but those and see, then we have to go into like modern fights, the Sherlock Holmes fights,
Yeah.
Robert Downey Jr. They could never make another Marvel superhero movie, and I would not give a lick of a dang if they would give me at least another Sherlock Holmes, uh, Robert Downey Jr. and Jude Law. I mean, right now, you
And
know, put the
there,
things down. Let's
there's
go.
there's a reason that those fights are the way they are, and that's because Robert Downey Jr. has been training in Wing Chun for like
Ever.
decades.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, it was part of his process of uh, getting over substance abuse.
Yeah. He's
Part
detoxing,
of what he
basically.
did
Yeah.
is he had to put it somewhere. It's like
Yeah.
watching Keanu Reeves, who people want to give him flack, and I don't know why. He has put in the hours, or
Mm-hmm.
ironically, Ed O'Neill. You want to see a good fighter? Yeah, Al Bundy.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
He's heck on wheels in a BJJ match. Tom
Mm-hmm.
Hardy is just I mean, he's so good he had to go fight under a false ID to be able to have anybody spar with him.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, Sherlock. I mean, those fights. What I love about those were they got the mentality close. When you're
Yeah.
really there, they got the mentality close in a way that most fights just they don't get how detached the mind becomes when you're really fighting. When you're really fighting, your body is doing its thing,
Yeah.
and your mind is they're two-lane highways with a meridian. Very rarely, once you've trained, do they need to merge. And the farther apart they can get and be effective, the better you are. I really think it has something to do with the parasympathetic nerve system, the part that
Mm-hmm.
governs uh, reflex actions and breathing. You literally, you are the fight, you aren't fighting it. It becomes a noun instead of a verb. It's a very strange state. And when you're there, your mind is like, wow, this is going on and this is going on. And thank you, Kitty, for answering the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I try not to use much jargon. In fact, that's one of my great passions, is cutting out the complex terminology because that's used to gatekeep so much. So thank you very much, Kitty.
I'm kind of surprised she knew that one. That kind of gives me a little bit of pride that she knew that one. So good job. This should be an interesting question. Your least favorite kind of person to fight.
Least favorite kind of person to fight. That's easy. That is the jackass who wants to hurt somebody.
That's the exact same answer that Kimberly gave last time. Exact same one.
Because for me, you have to understand at this point, especially in my life, and over the sparring, fencing, fighting, whatever we're doing isn't actually fighting. It's fun. I am having fun. I'm having a physical discussion about our techniques. You're going to do this. Okay, I'm going to do that. It's a communal version of Sherlock. It's not individual Sherlock vision. It gets much closer to that hero thing I talked about earlier, where when you're really in it, okay. Now I see your point. I will accept that you've thrown the point of your conversation here, and I must sadly rebuke that your grip is off. Or your footwork isn't where it should be, and you have these, and it really is. You want fun? Go through the videos and watch Trelena and I fight on my channel because we are so simpatico. That is great. When it's somebody who wants to hurt me, two things happen. One, I'm not having fun.
Yeah.
And this is somebody who is worse using the venue that I use to build people up. I have literally, and I hate saying this, but I've literally saved lives through teaching people to sword fight. I am very proud of the number of people I've been able to talk down from suicide. And a lot of them have been built up. So for me, the list field, the training area, is literally a sacred space. I mean, you have to understand that. It is. And so when somebody is approaching like that, out of ego. Now, I say out of ego because I do regularly train with combat veterans who, what they are doing is we are training so that they can find the line where their switch gets flipped. And to those that would be the 20% I don't usually talk about. They don't need to be built up. They need someone competent enough and attentive enough to go, stop. You've stopped being John the person. You are now John the Marine. Take a breath. And all of that is about teaching them to find where the trigger is so that their training doesn't take over in an inappropriate way because there's very little deprogramming done. That's different. I have no problem with those guys. But the guy, but oh God, I couldn't fight you. I see red. Yeah. Because those are the guys who are bullies. At the end of the day, it's a bully. And all the things in this world I cannot abide, stomach, or tolerate, it's a bully. It affects my political views. It affects my financial. I just can't stand the bully. And thank you for the promoting my YouTube channel. I do appreciate that.
So obviously the reverse of that is your most favorite kind of person to fight.
My most favorite kind of person to fight is one of two. It's either basically Trelena. It's Trelena, someone like my old buddy Jason Leto. He doesn't fight anymore because he's got like 6 kids. He's too busy, working to take care of that many mouths. But someone I know intimately, and we are able to start to get into that zone where, and it really is. I know a lot of people want green room this, but it is a type of very intense intimacy and understanding. And when you are there, nothing else matters. That is my favorite in self-service. Like, that is the favorite I enjoy. My favorite as a instructor, as what I do, I live for the moment when I am sparring with a student. And of course, this is all graduated response sparring, but where you see that the aha, and it goes from the moment where I can't to I can. When you've built somebody and you've watched and I mean, maybe I have crazy vision, but I can see like a light come off them. There is this flash, and they are not the same person that they were a second ago. And that new person, they've leveled up and they don't even know it. But they suddenly realize, I can do this. I get this. And they may, beyond that, they're going to get better. Everything after that's getting better, but it's that moment they get there. So yeah, fun fights are fun. People who are competent and will challenge me, will beat me, because I have physical limitations. So on a fair field, with equal training, someone who does not have physical limitations or does not have as severe should be able to defeat me. I don't take that as, I don't want to say it as a loss. I take that as, I agree to your point. The conversation is that you are better than me in this moment. And that is delightful. Now, when I work with somebody who I trust and they have come to trust me, something magical happens after those. And that's where I get to the point where I physically cannot beat you. But I still can see how someone could. And if you trust me, I can help you get better beyond where I am. And that's usually the point where someone goes from being a student to a colleague in my mind. Because I don't believe in belt systems and rankings. You're either a student, a fellow teacher, and or a colleague. And that's when, again, I'm looking for the conversation. And once they get there, every conversation after that is no longer a debate.
Yeah.
I understand that. I get that, Dan. Because it's an art. And this mentality applies to just about any art. All of it's sculpture. You're figuring out what needs more, what needs to be cut off. It's all sculpture. And that's where I get with that.
If you could fight one historical person, who would it be and why?
This is the question I have been most dogged by. And not for the reason you're smiling about. I have had to use my martial skills numerous times in my own defense. And that means having to inflict at points massive, lasting, and both physical and psychological trauma on an individual. That's where we get into the reality zone. Of, I have had to be in dumb situations. Many of them because I elect not to carry a firearm.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean my opponents in these situations have been as courteous.
Mm-hmm.
I have walked away from these successful. I have walked away from facing individuals, groups, and mobs. I know what it is to have people break like a wave over you, and where there were places very recently where I could still point to my bloodstains on the ceiling. So
Yeah, right.
as and uh, to answer your question before I answer it fully, I have to say something that happened. I'd been
Mm-hmm.
fencing for many, many years in this society.
Mm-hmm.
And because of my upbringing and because of the kind of person I am and the kind of people I was exposed to, there are people who to this day would gleefully end my life if they could. That is my
Yeah.
reality.
Mm-hmm.
And on the way to a practice, I saw someone who remarkably resembled physically one of these individuals.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I mean, to the point I thought I was having a hallucination. I had to double check. But it moved me over from sparring and sword fighting is fun to actual survival, Nick. And I
Mm-hmm.
proceeded to then walk into the tournament. Well, tournament. It was a practice, and we had a Valhalla Circle of Death. A Valhalla Circle of Death is everyone goes into a melee. You know, everyone all for themselves. However, anytime you knock somebody out of this, anybody they knocked out gets to come back.
Okay.
So the only way to win a Valhalla Circle of Death is to beat every single person.
Last man standing. Yeah.
Yeah. And I proceeded to do this with people who had known me for years, fighting with a focus and a clarity, we'll say, that they'd never seen. I moved entirely different. I fought entirely different. Because unfortunately, the trauma of the people I interacted with, of seeing that, almost brought me back. It didn't fully bring me back, but it brought me back to a different mental state.
Mm-hmm.
And from then on, I had people furious at me. If you can fight like that, why don't you fight like that every time? And they could not understand that it wasn't fun. At no point
Mm-hmm.
did I enjoy that. It was a systematic, mathematical, Machiavellian neutralization of every threat in front of me. And for while I was working this out, everyone was, they weren't my friends, they weren't my colleagues, they were people from the SEA, and they were threats, and each one of them had to be knocked down with absolute ruthlessness. There was no joy.
Mm-hmm.
Despite the smile, despite the cathartic appearance, there was no joy. Now, I say all of this because every time you say, which of these would you like to fight? My brain starts throwing asterisks. Like, hold on,
Yeah.
we need some caveats here. You know, um, there are people I would like to. I mean, if it's to spar with friendly type, I
Mm-hmm.
would love to. I Nicoletta Gigante, first off, because of all the masters I studied, he was the one I most, yeah, Robin's seen it. Unfortunately, Robin knows me long enough that she's seen why I am the way I am.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, uh, I am a peaceful man. I am not a harmless man. But
Mm-hmm.
and I hate that people take these things and turn them into Chad meme. No,
Yeah.
but so it would probably be. I'd like to Gigante and just Musashi. I mean, I don't really have much choice there. Uh, and largely, there are Japanese, there are Chinese practitioners I would love to see fight, but I don't know their names because it would be the founder of pick certain martial arts, and there's always an argument. So it's like that dude. I want to fight with that dude. Uh, but if we're fun fighting, if we're sparring, yeah. If
Yeah.
it's if it were like actual fighting, I don't want a piece of any of these guys. I grew up around combat veterans, disabled combat veterans. I mean, and I associated with people. I have a way of ending up places someone like me probably shouldn't be, around people that it would shock a great many people that I'm around. And I am comfortable in the presence of deadly people. I am intensely uncomfortable in the presence of dangerous people
Mm-hmm.
because there is a difference.
Oh yeah.
And so, whatever you say that, because I thought about it, like I want to. It's like I get the intention of the question,
Mm-hmm.
but I am trapped by the limitation of our language sometimes.
Yeah.
And I have a literal nature. It is something I have to fight constantly. For as sarcastic as I have a very literal mind. And it's like, I really see it. Do you want to be in a actual safe fight with Saladin? No. No, thank you. Would I love to see Saladin's swordsmanship up close and demonstrated? Absolutely. The actual
Yeah.
whirling dervishes, uh, for all the straight swords I train in, I have a great affection for certain types of curved sword and its
Yeah.
application. This is why I love the living heck. Well, one more reason out of a League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Yeah.
Nemo was done so right and so elegant. Oh, just the blade work made me happy as few movies do.
Yeah.
So I know complex question from a bizarre person or bizarre answer from a complex person. That's up for you to decide. But
Well, see, when I interviewed Foxy on this show a couple of months back, I told her the way you answer the question is just as important as the question itself.
oh, absolutely.
It's not just the answer, it's how you answer it.
The 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 action and the result are equally balanced by the intention.
Yeah.
And that's why when I am trying to make amends, I have to try to make amends in my life for the whole forgive me for the sins for what I have done and what I have failed to do. I
Mm-hmm.
am not as concerned about the mistakes I've made in actions. The ones that get me, and I try to express this to people, are when I have failed to act, what I have failed to do, when
Mm-hmm.
I did not intervene, when I did not. That those are the ones that are more likely to weigh heavy on me, and in a way that brings me comfort because the complexities of. I teach a style that is literally a scientific and tested approach to the application and understanding of violence.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, there is a tremendous karmic debt that comes from learning and teaching martial arts. Never
Yeah.
doubt that. Never doubt that there's a tremendous karmic debt because I am in part responsible for the actions of people I have trained or trained with in some cases.
Mm-hmm.
And that means I have to try to offset that by imparting a philosophy of kindness, of perception, because you can't understand if you don't perceive, if you don't really pay attention, and graduated response
Mm-hmm.
when appropriate. So I have to pay for the sins of my existence because I could be nothing else. I teach people to sword fight to build themselves up because that is a sacred, borderline religious calling for me, not from any
Mm-hmm.
fundamental order, or it's not something
No.
that was organizationally bestowed upon me. What happened was my first instructor in the SCA, who I will never say his name or confirm it, because he is the type of gentleman who seeks fame and notoriety or ignominy. He wants to be
Mm-hmm.
remembered. So the best thing I can do is publicly forget his name. But I was one of his students, and he realized I had a knack for instruction by the way I was asking questions and working with other people. And we had a gaggle of new people come in, and he screened them by physical capability, malleability, and in some cases attractiveness of being a female and him a male. You can do the math.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then after he'd worked with a few of them, done his basic intros, he had me work with, see what you can do with the rest. And I'm delighted. And I worked, and I found that he immediately had trained errors into their style so that he could beat them and so that they would
Mm-hmm.
be more likely to fail. I found out he had
Mm-hmm.
trained one into me. That, to an extent, is there to this day because it was a core style. When you start developing your core styles, things build off of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I worked with these people and got them going. And people started to realize because it's not about me, it's about them.
Yeah.
They get a buildup that others wouldn't have. And that ordinarily they wouldn't. And in working that became my passion. So I have no choice but to work with these people because one, I've been those people. I
Yeah.
know what it's like to be the one person that they just don't tell something that is necessary to fit in, or you've been sabotaged. I know what that's like intimately and painfully. So I doubled down, and that was the one of the big falling outs we had. Me and my instructor was my students were doing better than his because talent will take you so far, but if you don't have the dedication and discipline to work with it, you will fail in the long run, and you'll be
Yeah.
bitter about it. And a lot of my students wanted it. So I ended up getting people with physical limitations. I trained someone who's legally blind. Trained a couple now who are blind. Uh, the pride I feel is in their success.
Mm-hmm.
And I use, when I talk about it, I mention it because so many students that I pick up and so many people who would be students of some martial art, they don't have to come to me, but they don't believe
Mm-hmm.
they can. And I like to go, look, if I can do it, if my friend who's blind, I don't like to dox people, so that's why I don't drop a lot of names,
Mm-hmm.
could do it. If people who have been suicidal can do it, if people who have complex PTSD can do it, I acknowledge you have limitations. I acknowledge you have demons. But if you want it, you can do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I get to do this. And like the most powerful martial arts move in my whole arsenal of everything I know is to do this because it affects the most change. They put their foot right there and I boost them up just a little bit
Mm-hmm.
because I'm a
Yeah.
footstool. And when they get up there, they don't owe me anything because you don't owe a footstool.
Even if they believe they owe you something, I've had students come to me and offer to like give me things that I don't feel like I deserve, and I'm just like, no, go. You've learned enough from me. Go find your next person, and I don't need anything further from you.
Yeah, it's because like I said, I am not the main character. I mean, I'm the
Mm-hmm.
guest on the show, but I am not
Mm-hmm.
the main character in just about anything I do. Because the job, the gig, you'll hear me say the gig a lot. The gig is this bizarre, lifelong, multi tiered directive to just
Mm-hmm.
try to help people get a little bit higher. When you take fencing, for example, we'll take collegiate fencing as a concept. The gold medal represents the best of the best.
Yeah.
And the better they are, the harder everyone has to work to get there. The better they have to be. But it's also the harder it is to get from the bottom.
Yeah.
And lots of people are always trying to strain the peak of martial arts. And they're incredible people. They've been gifted with physical capability. They have the drive, the determination, the skills, the financial support. The stars have aligned to put them on a path of greatness. And I respect that and I admire that. And I
Mm-hmm.
have absolutely nothing to do with that. If you go on the far side, my goal is to take the level of the people on the very bottom and just move it up a notch or two. That's it. To help as
Yeah.
many as I can get a little bit better for when they go farther. And what has happened, I have found, is some of the people who are chasing the top get very offended when other people at the bottom are better than they were, because to them it closes. They don't see their growth on an outside zero to something. They only see the difference between them and the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, for me, when I'm looking at what I'm doing martial arts wise for me, if I pull all the student stuff away, if I put all the whole lot teacher Nick stuff aside, I am doing it to contain and kind of purify my inner nature. I am doing it to try to preserve and you know enhance my physical time. I have several conditions that as they are operate, they work to shorten my potential lifespan. It's not something I talk about a lot, and it's not something I will ever go into details about much. But in working towards what I do, I am building my body to
Mm-hmm.
hold on a little longer, in part for my son. That's
Yeah.
why my books have they have a tiny profit. I do not break even. I make a tiny profit on my books. The tiny profit is not for me. It is
Mm-hmm.
currently so that I can afford to do the guild stuff mostly, and more importantly, it is developing royalties that should exist after I'm done because my son, God willing, will outlive me substantially.
Mm-hmm.
And because of his situation, he doesn't have the means currently, though I do my best to help him obtain them, to sustain himself. So we live in a world where concepts like retirement and social security and things don't really tangibly exist for a lot of us.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the financial legacy of why I write my books. And I consider it also, and this is where I'm get real hard on you real fast. So this is, I'm going to have you in the hot seat. Oh, foolish mortal. Uh, it is time, my good man Thesis. Everyone who's watched this show has listened and learned from the get-go of Thesis's remarkable and fairly accomplished career of training in martial arts and teaching. You know, he has reached the point where I believe anyone who is significantly skilled in a skill set has a moral obligation to write down their version, their approach from the ground up because the work is more important than the worker. And if you put it down, if Musashi had never written The Five Rings, would we understand his incredibly unique approach to swordsmanship compared to the Bushido of the day? No way.
Mm-hmm.
If Dante hadn't chosen to go, wow, they're writing all this florid BS, let's kind of ground up, make it simple and understandable because he has a background in the military and he wants civilians to live, we wouldn't have that perspective. Uh, I.33 is one of the most influential historical manuals because it is the basis upon which so many people start their training. We do not know the author, but the work continues. So, again, and very publicly, and on your own show at that, I, on behalf of the future, as both a swordmaster uh, and a librarian, a preserver of knowledge and information, I am not asking. Do not make, I am flat out demanding, dictating on, in the name of the people who, as your students later, will essentially become your sword fighting children. As generations of people who could study your work will pass your work and your philosophy on in a world of cruelty and viciousness and delusion. You have a unique opportunity as a skilled martial artist with experience as an instructor to write your philosophy, write your history, and write your style down as much as possible into a volume that then will be distributed. I have people in India, Afghanistan, Australia, Poland, Germany, England. I have people worldwide, all throughout South America, who have bought my book. And my book sells in clusters, which means I'm sorry, I saw Dan Hollfield's comment. that someone bought it, studied it, and a few weeks later, or a month later, or a year later, suddenly I get 5 or 6 people buying the book. That means they've taken it and they're teaching with it. It is being learned. You have an obligation to, and this isn't just him. If you think I don't bug Trelena about several volumes, intimately and passionately, you have no idea. I hound poor Robin on a whole series of things she needs to do. But it does need to be something you need to put in your hat, and you need to start. You don't need to start writing it. I know if we get in the way of Darker Angels, Kitty will whip and or meteor a whole bunch of us with extreme prejudice. I understand that. And it will. This is not something that needs to be done today. It took me 15 years to write my book. But if you haven't written your notes down to start, you haven't started. So start compiling your notes. Make sure everyone knows where they are. Because we are mortals. And if I were to step out today and check my mail and get absolutely street pavement plastered by one of these seed trucks doing 85 miles an hour in a 15, whatever's on the other side, I don't have to worry because at least my what I wanted to accomplish is available to people, and it's in some libraries. You deserve that. You deserve that peace of mind, and your students potentially deserve both the refinement you will gain from writing it, because it will force you to take long, hard looks at your own techniques, and by phrasing it, you will end up with a curriculum that is defined, which will make your teaching better. Everyone wins. So there you go. I've hounded you. And it is a little at a time. Just literally jot things down. I probably have 6 or 8 starts on what became the Simple Sword. And I'm working on something adjacent to it right now, the Swordmaster's Guide to Arms and Armor. But you need to get there, but you can't get there till you start. So thank you, Foxy, for slightly... And if he won't, Foxy, if he won't, then it comes down to this. And no, I'm not going to tell Foxy and Kitty to cut you off on the joyous things that make male life fun. No, I am going to say, get him talking on one of these shows. Make the Teahouse, everyone hound him. Here we go. Everyone hound Thesis to do The Way of Thesis as an episode of the Teahouse. A full-on sit-down, this is how I fight, this is what I fight with. And then when you are done, you are in StreamYard. At the end, before you publish it, save the video and download the transcript. If you can't get it there, you should be able to get it from YouTube, which will give you a hideously edited, not formatted at all, start. And if you don't do that, then they have to do that and put it in front of you and give you complete grief that you made them get off their butt and give you your own words. And then when you're all done, you send it to Dan Holofield and have it edited, because you should have your books at least proofread and edited if you can afford it.
And now we are down to our last 2 questions. I always kind of enjoy the answers to this one, probably out of all of the questions. If you could learn one other weapon anywhere in the world that you don't already know, what would you choose?
And see, that's really hard for me, because I've already trained in so many weapons. I probably there is a type of sword. A safe is one of them. Sometimes they call it uh, a saber, but it's mostly guardless. That I has a very beautiful fluid style, and either training from the Siberian people, because actually a lot of women know the style. I've seen it demonstrated. It's a saber style, and a lot of Arabs. The two styles look very similar. I think it might be a Silk Road fork off, but
Yeah.
I would really like to either learn that or get a truly diverse course in Bartitsu. So when I say that, that's extended weaponizing the gentleman's everyday carry.
Mm-hmm.
So, because I carry a cane or a stick everywhere I go because of my paralysis in the legs,
Mm-hmm.
those are styles I would like to pick up, I think, that I don't already have. Now,
Yeah.
if I'm chasing what I already have, studying directly under Maestro Ramirez in Dispensa, that would just
Yeah.
be terrible. Uh, there are a couple people I actually know. I would love the opportunity to train under them much more.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Longcore is one of those. I would have loved the opportunity to train under more, also known as Moonwolf, also known as Duke Sir Moonwolf, Duke Sir Master Moonwolf Starkonson. I never say his name right. He's an SCA fighter. It's real easy. If you read the Heralds of Valdemar books, Mercedes Lackey is SCA. Oh, you should, by the way. They're fabulous. She was at the original party that started it. And Albrecht of Kars, who I've been accused of being, I take as a high compliment, is actually based on this guy. I've had the privilege of internee. I came second to him this much. This much. So I would love to train with him. But it's hard because I would have to do what I want to do, I'd have to have physiological repair that I'm currently not able to have because, they don't know how to treat it. That's why I'm so used to being pragmatic about it. It's hard for me to fantasize in certain ways.
And like I said, it's how you answer the question is just as important as the question itself. It gives you an insight on the other person's thought process. Because, like, I don't even remember what question it was, but I asked Foxy a question, and the answer that she gave is she wanted to, like, have a chess match with, like, an old master, and that answer just completely blew me away. Like, wow, okay.
Yeah.
I think she wanted to play chess with Sun Tzu, I think is what it was. And I'm like, okay then.
I love that. I love that as a thought. I despise chess because I'm too attached to my pieces. Shockingly, with everything I said, I hate the idea of the only way to win is sacrifice. There should be a way that gets everybody out. And that's where I always live.
Yeah. So the very last question, and yes, I always tell people I did absolutely steal this question from the Guy Windsor podcast.
Mm-hmm.
But how would you personally improve martial arts for, let's say, short, disabled men worldwide?
A lot of it, okay, the way to improve is the process that I've actually been trying to do, which is remove the mythos from any of the martial arts whenever possible. I have absolutely no issue with spiritual and religious aspects, But when you're training martial arts, you need to get that away. Um, the anything that gatekeeps it. So, for example, there's an organization called ARMA. I always forget their acronym, but they're European martial arts. However, they have a huge library database of manuals that you really can't find much anywhere else. However, the only way to get at it is to become a member. And to become a member, you have to sign a legal document that says you will not teach anyone outside of ARMA what you learn within ARMA, which is why I could never become a member. So to help, and not just me, help everybody, there's no reason martial arts should be gatekept. The internet is an incredible tool. It should be freely presented, easy to process, and we need to work on translations. Tom Leone did the translation for Gigante, the rapier or in the Soleil. Fantastic book. I recommend it to anyone who fences or is interested in it. It's on my must-read list. But he took it to English and made it easy to process or closer. There are too many issues with terminology and advanced. Well, you have to learn this vocabulary and this. I've learned to fight and picked up techniques from people from all over the country because of how I've traveled and these conversations and things. Do I know what they're called? No. My wife is adept at bow staff. She is adept at bow staff, bayonet, and a few other things that she was trained from people in the SCA, but as part of the process, they taught her the technique without the fancy terminology. So she knows the method, she knows the ability, but she can't have the conversation. So that gatekeeps her from being able to converse and further educate on a certain level and in certain communities. That needs to go away. We need essentially the universal translation or a Rosetta Stone where everybody can vaguely understand that, okay, this means this. That's the workshop side of what we do. And I love it. I love when I can get two trainers from different styles realizing with the combination of being able to sit at a table and talk and then get up and spar, then go sit back down, that this is the same as this, and suddenly it becomes very, very interesting. And again, that's another something magical. I do work with a lot of short people, but I've also worked with a lot of tall people. The tallest person I've ever fought was 7'2". His name was Magnus, and he fought with two rapiers that were literally as long as I am tall. The blades were 5 feet long. They were custom rapiers.
That's kind of one of the best parts about being an instructor is you can get the entire gamut of students all the way from literal midgets. Children? I hate that word, but yeah, to the Jolly Green Giant.
Oh yeah.
And everything in between. And each one you have to fight in such a way that you're not going to discourage them from continuing, but also you can show them flaws in their technique. You can be like, okay, now wait. Why did you get hit there? Think about that. Now let's try that again. That same thing. And you can work out how to stop that from happening.
It's the understanding the challenges of somebody with a body type that is, or body mechanics that are radically different than you. Because there are skeletal differences between men and women.
Yeah.
And this is, I'm talking outside of the spectrum of gender. Okay. No, I'm just saying, if you dig up a corpse and all that is left is a skeleton, because of the way the pelvis is shaped, because of the way the shoulders and stuff, a pathologist will go, that is a woman, or that is a man. And it does affect the mechanics.
Yeah.
Understanding that and being able to come from a position that is outside of your body's position is a skill set. And these are some of the things that separate us from, as instructors, from practitioners. Because you could be the greatest practitioner on earth, but you might not be a skilled instructor, and vice versa.
Yeah.
For me, I've chosen over many years in equipment, mentality, approach, and focus towards being an instructor.
Yeah.
Do I wonder about the path that's traveled? Sure. But because of that, I can do things like, I was watching a friend of mine fight very early in his career. He's incredibly talented now. He does bow hurt. He travels all over the world. He represented America. His name's Adrian Dinwiddie. Adrian Dinwiddie is a very, very large African-American man. And I saw him fighting, and he kept dying, and I tapped on his shoulder. I said, I can help you with this, but I'm going to need a stool. And I literally had to get a stepladder to get up, feeling like Phil from Hercules, up on the stepladder to see him. I'm still looking up at him. I'm going, see, because you're tabling your sword, you're tabling your shield, I can do this. Now, with a short person, you're expecting it. With a tall person, you're forgetting. And we have this conversation because I learned my shield work from the heavy fighters. When I was a fencer, they gave me my little buckler, and I have several of them, that little small shields, and they told me, hold it out and fight around it, basically. And I went, okay, that's one way to do it, but this could tire your arm. And I look across the field, and the heavy fighters are out there with strap-on shields and center bosses doing things. So I went up to my buddy John Miner, and I will drop his name because he's a neat guy. Looks like Hagrid. And I remember because John fights and his vocabulary becomes a series of grunts mostly. He relaxes into caveman mode. And I understand that. So I literally clambered up and I cracked him on top of the helmet a couple times. Because he fought SCA, which looks like this. This is actually, it would be an SCA heavy sword. I don't have a tip on it. It is 1.5-inch diameter rattan. This is essentially, it's not as hard as like hickory. I would say this is about like a maple stick.
Okay.
And they beat full force on each other with it, which gives you really dramatically different responses than if you're using the buffer. Recoil and vibration down this thing is literally you're hammering metal with a stick, and the person receiving has to decide if it's hard enough. But I went up, So that's when I was talking about female fighters, female heavy fighters like my wife. That's where you start to feel the nerve damage in the grip, in the wrist difference, because the severe blows. It's a totally different ballpark than a buffer. I'm not denigrating buffers.
No.
I got my lefty friends too. Shout out to the AppGuard folks over in Illinois. Your temporary king dude is one of the most awesome people I've ever met. I just can't remember. His real name is Travis. But I went up there and I grabbed, he had given me his dagger because his dagger was as long as my arm because he was so much bigger than me. So he gave it to me. We realized it was a sword. He just handed it to me. He thought it was the funniest thing ever. It's in the garage right now. But I cracked him on the head till he turned around because he wasn't hearing me. I go, oh. Said, held up this little buckler I had, and I said, how make go? Oh, make go! And now I'm standing in the heavy field, and the fencers are looking at me like I'm nuts because I'm saying that this is it's a shield. It's a little shield. I can have slightly bigger, but it's still a shield. What do you do? So I learned a lot of the Viking-style techniques of how you rotate the shield to accomplish different things. I learned some strikes I shouldn't learn because you're not supposed to do them in most of the games I play.
Yeah.
But then I went back, and the fencers were annoyed because it was doing much better. Mm-hmm. I was suddenly, people who were much more experienced could not kill me if I had a buckler in my hand because I was doing proper shield work with this buckler. The gap between the aisles, between the list fields, was about 5 feet long. That way a spear wasn't likely to go across into the other.
Yeah.
But that might have been 16 miles for the amount of people willing to cross it and learn.
Mm-hmm.
By crossing it and learning and training with people who are much taller than you, fighting John is always something like this. And I taught him how to control his style to fence. I've never seen, he's the only person who's done a draw cut to my stomach and launched me 8 feet back.
Yep.
I'm serious. His hand is literally, my pinky would slide on the outside of his fist. Each fist. So it's, like 9.5 of my fingers wide is one hand. Learning with different heights teaches you to think differently. And so, that's what we need. We need to cross the streams. We need people who are willing to walk back and forth, even if that doesn't become something you do in singularity.
Yeah.
For medical reasons, I don't usually fully heavy fight, and I never tried to authorize. But technique-wise and equipment-wise, I'm capable of doing it. So, and I took things from that. My stick handling, my tactics, group tactics. I took that from heavy fighting because at the time, the fencing tactics were laughable. And that's how I ended up being the last man standing on a field of 14. Because I had 14 aside. It did nearly kill me from heat exhaustion, but hydrate, folks.
Yeah.
I think you have one more question, and we have to get out relatively. Oh, was that the last one?
Pretty much it.
Excellent. I just didn't want to get you guys in trouble with the stupid o'clock, folks.
Yeah, there's like 20 minutes to go until that start. This went way longer than any interview I've had yet, but it's good.
I'm sorry.
Right. No.
If it helps, I did try to. This is the edited, Nick's being nice version. The real version requires Denny's and seeing the sun come up. But
the one before this with Kimberly was 1 hour and 40 minutes. And the very first one with Trey could have been 1 hour and 40 minutes because after we signed off on the regular hour, we kept talking for 45 minutes. So, it's always interesting to have these kind of conversations. And this comment right here, I very much agree with. from Kitty. Still think it'd be interesting for Thesis and Amanda to have a conversation, even if it's not recorded. Just think it'd be a good conversation. It would be, yeah. Even if she didn't want to be on the show, I just think it would be interesting to sit down like this and just talk things out.
Oh, it's for Amanda, and I have to think about. I have to phrase this very carefully.
Yeah.
But we both endured in a very short amount of time tremendous loss in that she lost both her parents relatively quickly. She lost her childhood home. We both lost jobs. We both had major health issues. Because of what happened, we lost the SCA at almost the exact same time. So a whole lot unraveled. Okay. And it is a very gentle and very sore spot for her, justifiably.
Yeah.
And unfortunately for her to have that kind of conversation with you, it would be very easy for her to walk into an emotional landmine.
No, yeah.
So that's part of it. And there is some other stuff I'll probably let you in on, but it's not broadcast nature.
Yeah, that's fine. But I definitely need to go get some food and
right.
But
well, thank you for having me on. Thank the chat for sticking
awesome.
around. I'm sure you guys hit the like button, right? I mean, Thesis put a lot of work into this one.
Yeah, this was, and I wore my bright orange shirt in honor of Nick today. So
I appreciate it. The world's too dark. We got to light it up somehow.
Yeah, that was her fault. When she first met me, my entire wardrobe was black, dark black, midnight black. She brought color in more ways than one. But yeah, I will be back next week. I might even take Dan's suggestion on, discussing the evolution of working backwards from armed Chinese martial arts to unarmed. That's actually a really good idea. I might actually do that next week.
That is a very good topic to discuss.
Yes.
Because that's just, especially when you look at something like Tai Chi, where I would say 95% of it, as it's presented, is a very good, healthy dance.
Oh, yeah.
But 5% of it will just rip your socks off. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
Of practitioners and such.
Oh, yeah. But it's been a good conversation, and I'm glad everyone was at least nice to me in the chat and didn't barrage me with questions. And I will see everyone.
I was a little worried. I was worried I was boring the chat because of how I'm used to the never mind the furthermore slugfest. Oh, I've done my intro. I'm 200 comments behind. Let's go. But thank you guys for being courteous, and
that was good.
I do hope you get something to eat.
Yes, I plan to go get dinner right after this as soon as we end stream. So good night, everyone. Go head over to Stupid O'Clock in 15 minutes. And I will see you all next week. 再见.
Toodles, folks.